Hi there. Hello. Welcome back to the Pitch Grid. Thank you so much for stopping by once again. We have a pretty action-packed week full of games to preview, so let's get right to it. Let's go pitch side real quick and head to the Friday game. That is Luton hosting West Brom. Luton Town coming off the pretty devastating 3-2 loss at Coventry. It was a Yeah, that was just a brutal loss. They had the lead 2-0 and then uh, gave up three goals, including a 92nd minute winner by Haji Wright. Um, it was a very brutal way for them to lose, and it puts Luton right back in the relegation zone. Meanwhile, West Brom were in first place at the beginning of October. Ever since their loss to Middlesbrough, they have not won a single game, and even before that, really. They lost to Sheffield Wednesday, and that was the last win for West Brom was September 21st. Ever since, they have not won. They have only lost or drawn. And in the last four games, admittedly, they've drawn. But the latest, their last game, was a draw to Cardiff at home. And now they head on the road to face a desperate Luton Town team. Um, I mean, you know, you would think, that West Brom should win this, but I'm not so sure anymore. Like, this is a hard one to kind of predict or say there should be a clear winner because, like, West Brom are not in their best form in terms of losses and wins right now. Well, like, Luton Town aren't on their best form either after that loss to Coventry. That was their second straight loss after kind of picking themselves up off the mat with a win at Watford. So, yeah, this is a huge game for both sides. West Brom wanting to stay in the playoff places, Luton wanting to get out of the relegation zone. Rob Edwards for Luton really, really, really under a lot of pressure to win, especially considering he's probably going to get sacked if this kind of form continues for Luton. So, yeah, I mean, West Brom, you would think West Brom should win, but at the same time, I could easily see this being a draw, and another draw for West Brom wouldn't exactly help anything. So, yeah, it should be a decent game for the champion. Speaking of championship speaking, typical, um, typical game with kind of with stakes that are high enough for both teams that they would really like all 3 points. But you could easily see both coming away with points. So, yeah, very fascinating game there to start the weekend off. Blackburn Sheffield United, another fascinating game between two teams that are not far off from each other at the table standings. Um, Sheffield United being 22 points, Blackburn being at 19, both in the playoff places. Um, Blackburn only in by the slimmest of margins. Right now, they are only 1 point ahead of teams like Norwich, Watford, and Middlesbrough. They're actually tied on points with Watford. So, yeah, um, this should be a good game. Kind of looking forward to seeing who comes out of it. Blackburn coming off the loss to Watford over the weekend. Um, an unlucky kind of game where Watford took their one chance, which was a penalty, and Blackburn just couldn't take advantage of any of the opportunities they created. Sheffield United coming off the win at Stoke 2-0, home to Stoke 2-0. This is Sheffield United kind of bounced back nicely after their loss to Middlesbrough. Um, this should be a good game. I could easily see this being a draw as well. Um, but also I could see Sheffield United winning because Blackburn seem to struggle with opposition that's close to them in terms of quality, and I think Sheffield United do have the quality to be better than Blackburn. So, but at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked as well if Blackburn come away with all 3 points. It's just the championship is so disjointed. You never know what kind of result can happen on any game. So yeah, but you would think Sheffield United could pull away all 3 points from this game. Um, Oxford and Swansea is a matchup as well. Oxford, they are coming off their 2-0 loss to Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. Meanwhile, Swansea coming off the 1-0 loss at home to Millwall. This is at Oxford, where Oxford are traditionally pretty hard to beat this year at home. Um, the most everybody usually comes away with is a point when they come to the Kassam Stadium. This should be a good game, I think. Typical middle of the table championship game, where both teams are pretty even. Both kind of create the same amount of goals and goals and allow the same amount of goals too. They're both at a 0 goal differential, which is interesting. I Oxford do seem to have the better quality team overall this year. That's why they're higher in the table. They have been a bit more competitive than Swansea has been this year. Swansea just kind of have looked lifeless overall, except for like brief glimpses. So yeah, and the thing is, like Swansea has the talent to be a good, mid-table championship side. They just don't always realize it. It's kind of frustrating. Um, but yeah, Oxford, you would think they could at least get a point, if not all 3 out of this. Stoke and Derby, another interesting matchup as well, mid-table. Derby County coming off of the draw with Hull, 1-1 draw over the weekend. Stoke, of course, coming off the 2-0 defeat at Sheffield United. Stoke really need this win to keep themselves out of the relegation zone. Um, they are only a point off of it. Derby County would really like to kind of get back into the top 10. They could do that with a win. Um, yeah, this is, 2 teams that really want to kind of just cement themselves as better than what the table says they are. And I mean, to be honest, Derby County is kind of a mid-table top 10 championship side. Not exactly like going to be playoffs, I don't think, but enough to kind of just be annoying and, maybe be a team that can thwart someone's chances at the playoffs. Meanwhile, Stoke, they're kind of a bottom half team that just, they can score goals and they can be very ruthless when they want to be. Just look at the 6-1 win against Portsmouth. But at the same time, like, it's never consistent enough for Stoke. And it is at Stoke. And I mean, one of the more popular things in the championship is, can you get it done on a rainy night, cold night in Stoke? And this is that instance for Derby. Um, they could. I wouldn't be shocked if Derby came away with all 3 points. They are the better team in my opinion. Even though the stats don't, really sometimes back them up, and they are better at home than they are away. So I could easily see Stoke coming away with points as well, because they are at home, and Stoke is kind of a weird place to play, just because of the weird home field advantage that is being cold and wet and rainy all the time there. So, um, but you know, it's not like Derby shouldn't be able to win this if they want to really assert themselves as a top half championship team, and that's kind of what they're trying to be, and the table shows that. It just they need to prove it. So, Cardiff, Norwich City. Cardiff coming off the 0-0 draw with West Brom. Norwich City coming off the 3-3 draw with Middlesbrough. Norwich have actually drawn 4 of the last 5, and coming up against a Cardiff team that are undefeated in their last 5, 3 wins, 2 draws. So very much improved start from Cardiff, who are much better at home, and this is at Cardiff. Norwich are the much better team in my opinion. Like, this should be a Norwich win. They have Borja Signs, who is absolutely on fire. He has 10 goals and is the Golden Boot leader this year so far. He's just scoring goals for fun. Callum Robinson, of course, is the leading scorer for Cardiff. We saw in the West Brom game with Cardiff that Cardiff can't really create a ton of chances, especially on the road. It will be interesting to see now that they're at home if they can do anything about it. If they somehow slow down Norwich and get a draw, I'll be very pleasantly surprised. Or even if they get all 3 points, I'll be very, very surprised and impressed actually, because Norwich are just a very good team, and will be hanging around the playoffs. Until the end of the year. And this could be a banana skin game for Norwich because of how hot Cardiff have been lately. Um, but I mean, Norwich haven't exactly been bad. They are pretty much they're worse on the road than they are at home. Um, at home, they are pretty much unstoppable. They still have not dropped a lot, have not suffered defeat at Carrow Road, but now they're at Cardiff, and last time they were on the road, they almost lost to Preston. Um, yeah, this should be an interesting game. I would expect though Norwich to grab all 3 points in this game. Hull and Portsmouth. Portsmouth coming off the disappointing game with Sheffield Wednesday where they led 1-0 and then eventually lost 2-1 off of the Michael Smith worldie. Hull coming off the 1-1 draw with Derby County at Pride Park. Hull, Portsmouth are still looking for a win to just kind of, get themselves going again. Their only win this year has been on the road, which is kind of depressing for them. The both teams are not great. Hull right now, and the table is at 15th with 14 points, so they're only 6 points off of Portsmouth. But they both have a very bad goal differential, and it shows how inconsistent Hull's attack has been this year, really, and how porous their defense is compared to last year. Uh, of course, Hull had to sell a bunch of players and, you know, let go a lot of the players that made them really good last year, and it shows. Um, they don't have the same, of course, attacking quality. It's interesting. You look at the stats; both have very similar amount of goals scored, except that Portsmouth have allowed more goals, obviously, because they're bottom of the table. But I could easily see this being a draw. I could also see Hull taking all 3 points. It is at the MKM, which is home for Hull. I would easily be. I wouldn't be shocked if Hull did take all 3 points. But still, Portsmouth are scrappy enough, and Hull just are not great defensively enough. I could easily see this being a draw. Leeds, Plymouth. This is a interesting game. Leeds are coming off the 0-0 draw with Bristol City over the weekend, and Plymouth are coming off the crazy comeback that they made to make it a draw with Preston at home over the weekend. The 3-3 draw where they were down 3-0 and came all the way back to tie it in the last minutes. Um, this is the game that you would think Leeds should win. Leeds have been dominant this year for the most part, only allowing 8 total goals this year, a plus 11 goal differential. They are very creative and play very open style. Plymouth are not that. They have a negative 9 goal differential. They're trying to also stay off of the relegation zone. For right now, they are only a point off in 21st, with that negative 9 goal differential not helping the matters. Um, yeah, this is a game Leeds should win. Um, it is at Leeds, so that's huge for them. Yeah, this is a game you would think Joel Perreault could score in. He's got 4 goals for Leeds this year, and Brandon Ayrton is also one of their leading scorers. Morgan Whitaker, who got the equalizer against Preston, is also Plymouth's leading scorer. Yeah, this is a game that Leeds should win. Uh, I would start getting concerned though if they do lose or draw this one to Plymouth, because that would be a fourth draw in 6, which is kind of weird for Leeds after the really hot start they've had. Um, they had those back-to-back wins against Sheffield United and Watford, and otherwise they've kind of just tied teams. Granted, those are teams in the top 10 of the table: Norwich, Sunderland, and Bristol City. So it's not like they're bad teams they've drawn against. Um, Going back to September, they were beating up on teams, even though they lost like to 1-0 to Burnley in the beginning of September. So yeah, this is a very winnable game for Leeds to kind of keep cementing their place at the top of the table. Preston, Bristol City. This is kind of an interesting game because Bristol City, coming off the 0-0 draw with Leeds, show they actually, they can compete with the top teams in the championship. Meanwhile, they drew. Preston drew with Plymouth over the weekend. Um, just a quick note: Preston did have a Carabao Cup match over the midweek. They lost 3-0 to Arsenal, so yeah, not a great. But I would want to say Paul Heckingbottom has made this Preston team a lot more fun and more watchable. They are a lot better, especially at Deepdale. Um, when they attack. These are two, I think, pretty even teams, to be honest. Preston, even though Preston is at 16th with 14 points, they're only 2 points off of Bristol City, who are 11th now in the table. So yeah, these are, I think, two very similar teams. Two teams that would love a win. A win for Preston would catapult them to, right around 10th place, which is where they ended up last year. A win for Bristol City would get them at 19 points, which keeps them right outside the playoffs. But still, or right now, actually, it would be playoffs because Blackburn aren't there. But Bristol City have a pretty unhealthy goal differential. That is the kind of interesting thing about both these teams. They both have a negative goal differential. Preston with -4, Bristol City with -2. The defenses have not been great. Bristol City has been a very draw-heavy team as of late. They have drawn 4 of the last 5, unless you count their win at Middlesbrough, because that was their only win out of the last 5, which were all, the rest of them were draws. So yeah, I could easily see this being a draw because they're both so even, and they both don't score a ton of goals. But at the same time, I could easily see Preston being at home, and they play much better in general, taking all 3 points. Sunderland QPR is the next matchup. This should be a pretty easy win for Sunderland because of how good Sunderland are. They are coming into this game 5 straight undefeated, including a big win at home over Oxford, where Sunderland is invincible. This is at QPR. QPR just coming off the 0-0 draw with Burnley over the weekend at Turf Moor. So a huge result for QPR that could easily boost their confidence. But this is against a Sunderland side who are incredibly good. One of the best defenses in the championship, only allowing 9 goals all season so far. So very good stuff. I would not be shocked if this was a pretty comfortable win for Sunderland over the relegation side that is in London. Um, Sheffield Wednesday, Watford is another match on the weekend, and Sheffield Wednesday, they're coming off the 2-1 win over Portsmouth. Also, do want to point out as well, they did have a Carabao Cup match themselves where they lost to Brentford on penalties. So kudos to Wednesday taking a Premier League side all the way to penalties and barely losing on penalties. Um, that is not something I expected out of Sheffield Wednesday, for sure, considering how they've been so inconsistent in the championship. Watford coming off of the 1-0 win over Blackburn. And a win is a win for Watford, really. And Watford really want to keep the pressure on. just on the playoff spots, and they can do it. It's not impossible. Like this is a game that you would think Watford should win. For it is interesting. Looking at the stats, you wouldn't think Watford would be at the playoffs in the range of the playoffs because of their goal differential. They are -3. It's just because they concede a lot, especially when they're on the road. In Sheffield Wednesday, they've shown, like they did against Portsmouth, they can beat a bad defense, like Portsmouth. And Watford doesn't exactly have the best defense. Um, where Sheffield Wednesday have guys like Barry Bannon and Josh Windus, who are two good threats. Watford also has some good players of their own. I could easily see this being a draw, but also Wednesday could pull this off just because they're at home and they tend to do much better at home than they do on the road. They are, you know, their last home result, to be fair, was a 2-0 loss to Burnley, I believe. Um, I just don't think Watford's on that Burnley level. Obviously, not many are, but yeah, this should be a fascinating game. I think it's more even than the table would suggest, and stats kind of show that they both kind of concede a lot of goals, and don't score a ton either. So this should be a decent matchup. I do think Sheffield Wednesday could pull this out. Both teams could. A draw wouldn't actually probably be the most unrealistic result. Um, Middlesbrough Coventry it's a rematch of a playoff final from a couple of years ago. Playoff semifinal, I should say. Um, both teams coming into this with good results for both teams. Middlesbrough coming off the disappointing draw with Norwich City, even though it was a good result, it's still very disappointing because they were up 3-1. Coventry coming off the great 3-2 win over Luton to get them out of the relegation zone. Um, yeah, this should be an interesting game. Both have scored the same amount of goals actually. It's just Coventry had the leakier defense. And this is at the Riverside, by the way. Um, Middlesbrough have been one of the better defensive sides of the championship. They've only allowed 12 goals. Um, they're not the best. They do tend to make mistakes of their own. Um, that kill them in a lot of games. But they are a team that if they are organized and can stay organized, they're one of the best in the championship defensively. Um, I Even though Country are coming off the win, I could easily see Borough pulling this out just because they're looking for a result to climb up the table. Their next 4 games, they have Coventry, QPR, Luton, and Oxford. 3 of those being easily winnable games. And if they are the side that a lot expect them to be, this would be a game they need to win to climb up the standings and take advantage of. So, um, they're both, Coventry on their day are a very good attacking side, with Haji Wright, Ellis Sims, and all that. It's just, can either team take advantage of it? And Middlesbrough are a pretty good side at home. They've only lost 1 all year at home, which is pretty good. Yeah, this should be a good game. But I could see Borough pulling out all 3 points, or it being a draw. So, in the final game of the weekend, it's Millwall against Burnley. Millwall coming off the 1-0 win over Swansea. Burnley coming off the 0-0 draw with QPR. It is at the Den in London, where Millwall plays their home matches. This is a Millwall team that are very, mid-table championship team. They concede about as many goals as they score. Um, Except, at times it doesn't feel like it because, you know, they can scrape out wins. And they're coming up against the best defensive side in the championship. Burnley, who've only conceded 5 total goals all year. This is a question of, can Burnley score goals? Because they have the talent, they can put the shots on. It's a matter of if they can score. And usually, if they usually win by a goal. And this is a Millwall team that usually, if you can score a goal on them, you usually can start getting confidence on them and start rolling. And I would dare say, if Burnley score first, this is probably going to be a Burnley win. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Millwall put up a fight and this is a draw again. And that wouldn't be great for Burnley, considering they need this to stay in the top two. They want to stay in the top two unless Leeds win, and that'd be a moot point. So, well, Burnley would still, if they win, they would still stay up at the top because of goal differential. But still, Burnley want this win. They need it. They've been drawing. They've drawn a lot. They've drawn 3 of the last 5. Um, Millwall, meanwhile, come into this with 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss. So, undefeated in their last 4 with a total of 8 points out of 12. So not awful, but yeah. If Millwall want to, stay in the conversation of the, you know, hey, we're kind of a surprise team this year in the championship, they would need a win over Burnley to kind of say, hey, we've arrived. Um, Again, this is early doors, so it's not like, crunch time or anything, but still, it would be a very impressive early season win for Millwall to kind of just hope if they want to stay near the top of the championship. So that was our pitch side preview for the week. Let's head to grid side and look at the week 9 games. Oh, real quick before we leave pitch side, um, let, I do want to go over. I did a segment a couple of weeks ago where I picked 3 guys to be, who I thought could be a huge impact if you play EFL fantasy. Um, I would highly recommend Borja Signs from Norwich. He is just on fire, like I said. He scored 10 goals, and he does not look like he's going to slow down anytime soon. Um, if you want to pick any Leeds player, I wouldn't be mad at you. They're playing Plymouth and Millwall this week. I mean, um, or any Sunderland player. I would definitely pick Daniel Shirkin, the defender for Sunderland. Sunderland are going up against QPR and Preston, both away, but those are winnable games for a team like Sunderland. And another guy I would probably recommend is Joel Perreault. He's been kind of getting on a goal scoring tear himself. For Leeds, they are playing Plymouth and Millwall, like I said. Yeah, those are kind of 3 guys I would keep an eye on. Also, just if you want to pick any Birmingham City player as well, that wouldn't be a bad move as well, because Birmingham City just score goals and win games. So those easily are some points to be had there as well. All right, let's head grid side. There is a lot to cover in terms of, you know, games and kind of what that means this for the season, as we're starting to kind of get into the meat of the season now that we're pretty much, this week will be the halfway point of the year officially, because we are at week 9 out of 17. Um, yeah, so let's start with the Texans and Jets. Texans coming into this game, they got a 23-20 win over the Colts, huge divisional win. But they did lose Stephon Diggs to an ACL. He will be out the rest of the year. Just not good at all for them. Jets coming off of their fifth straight defeat over to the New England Patriots. A last minute loss where they thought they were going to come out of it with a win, but Patriots with 25 seconds took the lead and won 25-22. Actually, a lot of people are saying this should be a pretty even matchup. Um, and actually, the Texans are favored, or actually, the Jets are favored in this game by those who would be betting experts. CJ Stroud has not been the guy he was last year, where he was just torching defenses and making everyone look silly. This is going to be a game that Tank Dell has to really step out on because otherwise it's going to be just Joe Mixon carrying the offense. I mean, he's been doing a pretty good job, let's be fair. 102 carries for 503 yards and 5 touchdowns is not awful. But, Joe Mixon is not exactly the centerpiece of an offense that he could have been when he was in his prime with the Bengals. Jets have a solid enough defense that they could keep the Texans in check. Texans have not been doing great on offense lately. Obviously, they've had a lot of injuries at the receiver position, uh, with no Nico Collins and now no Stephon Diggs. They're going to be relying on a lot of young guys like John Mechie and Tank Dell, and yeah, it's going to be hard for the Texans. I would not be shocked if the Texans were in the market on the trade market for a receiver. Cooper Kupp maybe, might be someone they might be targeting now that they need a kind of a true number one receiver. Or I mean, they might not because Nico Collins will be coming back. I think eventually. I don't know how long that is from now. But the Jets need this win desperately, just for some pride at this point. The season's practically over for them, but they'd like to get a first win with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams back on track. Um, you know, yeah, this is a game that is scarily kind of even. Actually, it might be pretty good. I could easily see the Texans pulling this out, but barely. I could also see the Jets kind of just somehow sneaking this out just because the Texans don't have a ton on offense to offer, and the Texans defense hasn't exactly been locked down either. So yeah, this is a weird game, and if either team won, I would not be shocked. But you would think Texans have the slightly better talent, so they would win. You would think. Moving on, we've got the Dolphins and Bills. Dolphins coming off the loss to Arizona over at home, and the Bills coming off a dominating win over the Seahawks. Tua is back once again. Bills are favored by 6 because they are at home. This should be. I think this is going to be more competitive than people would think, just because Tua is back and the offense did look better last week with him under center compared to what, and that's not. I mean, it's a pretty low bar considering what the Dolphins' offense has been without Tua. But still, you know, they need this win to kind of just keep themselves in the playoff. Statistically, the playoff hunt, and yeah, this is a pretty big game for the Dolphins. Bills would like to clinch. Keep putting pressure on the division. They would like, the pressure of not having to clinch a division in week 17. Um, week 18, I should say. Um, yeah, this is a game the Bills should win because they have the better talent on both sides of the ball. Dolphins are injured on both sides of the ball pretty heavily, though the offense has finally started to kind of get healthy for the Dolphins. With A-Chain back and Mostert's back, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle made a return last week, and of course Tua as well. Um, so if this was a more of a shootout than people expect, I would not be shocked. Dolphins Bills usually is when both teams are healthy. But yeah, the Bills should win this. It is at home for them, so that helps as well. Um, Broncos Ravens is an interesting game actually. There was some news over the last 24 hours that Lamar Jackson didn't practice, and he's been their MVP player for the Ravens. With 2,099 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. You know, MVP numbers for the quarterback, the Baltimore Ravens quarterback, who has just been, you know, the reigning MVP and just been on fire this year. Broncos just, they keep plugging away. They coming off a win over the Panthers, you know, as expected. It's the Panthers. But now they get a litmus test. They have the Ravens and the Chiefs coming up. and this is their first big hurdle, the Ravens. And if somehow Broncos were to pull this off, this would be huge for them, and they could do it. Honestly, they have a really good defense, one of the best defenses in the league. Patrick Surtain leads that group. They've got a chance to do it. It's just a matter if they can slow down King Henry, who has 948 yards and 9 touchdowns off of 145 carries. So very good stuff. Zay Flowers is back. The thing is, the Ravens' defense is not great. We saw that last week in their loss to the Browns, where they just couldn't stop Jameis Winston consistently to save their life. And yeah, against an offense like the Broncos, who are very run heavy, they're led by Javonte Williams, in my opinion, 90 carries for 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. Bo Nix has been kind of mid. He hasn't been awesome, but he hasn't been awful either. 1,530 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 picks. Solid enough, to get the job done. And Ravens are actually favored here by 9.5 points. I think that should be a lot lower. Broncos are not that bad. And yes, while it might be, I always do think the thing to monitor in this game is the status of Lamar Jackson. If he does not play this game, it is much, much more feasible for the Broncos to pull this off, in my opinion. And if he is healthy, it's still feasible for the Broncos to win. I just wouldn't feel comfortable picking them just because the Ravens. I can't say that either because the Broncos have been good enough to pull out wins that I wouldn't have expected, like their win over the Buccaneers. They lately though have been playing some pretty weak teams, so it would be interesting to see how they do against an actually good team. Um, so yeah, this is I think their good win recently has been the Buccaneers. Um, but yeah, I would expect this to be a close game. I would because the Broncos defense can easily keep their offense in it, and if this is like a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, I wouldn't be shocked if the Broncos pulled it off. This is that kind of a fine margins game. NFL is always like that, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens won, but also I would not be shocked at all if the Broncos somehow pulled this off. Chargers Browns. Uh, this kind of feels like a weird game, honestly. Chargers coming into this game with the win over the Saints, um, 26-8. Baseball score for most of this game, I think it was like 9-5 or 9-3 at one point, something weird like that for a long time. And then the Chargers just pulled away. Meanwhile, the Browns coming off, like we just said, the win over the Ravens, where Jameis Winston threw a pretty good game with 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards passing. So good job by him. This is why this feels like a game that should be more close than you would think, because both offenses, Chargers do not have a propensity to score because they have no receivers, and the Browns they're the Browns. I know that sounds very cliche, and if you don't know the history of the Browns, it's you know they've been pretty cursed franchise for most of their existence. They can't seem to pull out wins when they need them. They just go through a litany of quarterbacks that never help. It's just sad. But if anything gives them hope, it's that they are at home, and what am I saying? Deshaun Watson's out for the year. If Jameis Winston can play like he did last week, they have a shot. They really do. The Chargers are one of the better scoring defenses in the league. That is a very interesting stat, in my opinion. Um, but even though they have that defense, when they've been exposed, it's been because they've faced a good, scrappy running game that has a good enough passing attack to just get themselves over the line. And that feels like what the Browns are because they have, Nick Chubb, um, and Jameis Winston is slinging the rock. Of course, do we, expect Jameis Winston of old to come back, the 30 for 30 quarterback, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks? Um, that's a possibility as well. But yeah, I think this is a game that would be closer than people would think. I would say the Chargers are probably the slight favorites in this, just because Justin Herbert has played pretty well. He's thrown 8 touchdowns and a pick. Like he's done pretty well, even though he has the lack of weapons. And J.K. Dobbins is 112 carries, 543 yards, 4 touchdowns. I just could see because the Browns' defense is still a pretty good unit overall. They have great defensive line, good secondary overall. I would not be shocked if this was a close game and came down to the last whoever has the ball last. Um, Next up, we have the Saints and Panthers. Just kind of want to go over this cursory wise. The Saints are not expecting Derek Carr back this week. I think he's still like a week or two off. Um, yeah, I mean, Carr's kind of come out this week and expressed how frustrating it is for him, you know, to deal with this injury. Oh, actually, no. Actually, Derek Carr is expected back this week. Um, so that's huge news for the Saints. Um, he is expected to play on Sunday against the Panthers. So that's huge. I mean, the Saints are still very injured. They do not have Rashid Shaheed. That was one of his favorite targets, especially downfield, because Shaheed just has a crap ton of speed. They're going up against a Panthers team that's pretty bad. Both teams are pretty bad, but I would say, the Saints should win this pretty easily. Panthers are not great. Andy Dalton is also going to be playing this week for the Panthers, so that's huge. I don't know what kind of weapons they're going to have, except for Chuba Hubbard and maybe Xavier Legette. Might be back. Who knows? I just don't see this being this. This could be an ugly game where somehow the Saints just win by a possession. Um, it's a divisional game. Anything can happen. Um, and that's the beauty of like football, especially in divisional games, because both teams know each other so well. I mean, whoever wins this game, who will stay out of last place. The loser just is in last place because Panthers win. They'll both be 2-7, and the Panthers will have the tiebreaker with the win. But I don't see that happening. This should be a win for the Saints, even if it's an ugly game that they just barely scrape by with. Raiders Bengals is it's a game where I mean the Raiders season is practically over. They mathematically are still in it, but they're 2-6, and it's almost pretty much on life support. Same with the Bengals. Let's be honest. They're 3-5, still mathematically in it. Um, but a loss here, I think, would easily just pretty much end the season for them. I mean, Joe Burrow's come out and said we need to win 7 out of 9 games. They have the talent to do it. It's a question of if they can, because their defense is when they've come up against good opposition, they just cannot do it at all. And that showed last week in their blowout loss to Philadelphia. Vegas coming off of the loss to Kansas City, where they played well for stretches, but in the end, just it didn't look great at all for them. Gardner Minshew comes in this game, the starting quarterback again with 1,377 yards, 6 touchdowns, 8 picks. Burrow's still playing great for the Bengals, 1,993 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. Both of these teams do not have a great running game. That's pretty clear. I believe the Bengals have somewhere around like 44 yards per game. Chase Brown is their leading running back with 79 carries for 359 yards and 4 touchdowns. 78 carries. Yeah, it's not great for either. And Alexander Madison for the Raiders has 83 carries for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, both teams do not have a great running game. Both teams can have a good passing game when they want it. Brock Bowers is he's been pretty good for the Raiders this year. 52 catches, 535 yards, and a touchdown. So just pretty much exactly what everyone expected, from the rookie. He actually is kind of balling. Jamar Chase, the leading receiver for the Bengals, 48 catches for 674 yards and 7 touchdowns. He did not have a great game last week, only 54 yards receiving. Um, this is at home for the Bengals, who are 0-4 actually at home. So they're looking to get off the skid. And this is a game they should win because the Raiders are not consistent enough to pull this off. If the Raiders pull this off, I mean, they keep their season alive, barely, and basically drag the Bengals down to where they are right before the Bengals have to go play the Ravens on Thursday night. So, yeah, this is a game the Bengals need to win if they want to keep themselves in the playoff hunt. I don't think they're going to keep themselves in the playoff hunt for much longer because of their schedule. But, a win here would be a much needed morale boost, and maybe, who knows, we keep thinking they'll go on a run just because it's the Bengals, but you never know. This year's team does not look great. I just can't see them, making the run necessary to make the playoffs. But at the same time, you never know. It's a National Football League. Anything can happen. So this is a kind of a do or die game for both teams. Raiders just need this to kind of also get morale, and you know they would actually have a tiebreaker, I think, over the Bengals with the win. So yeah, a very interesting game. I do think it could be a close game, but I do think the Bengals should win this. Commanders Giants. Commanders coming off the Hail Mary win over the Bears last week. The Giants coming off of a a frustrating loss to the Steelers, where it was the score made it more comfortable than it was for most of the game against the Steelers, where the Steelers pulled away eventually. Commanders should win this one pretty easily. Jane Daniels is again on fire. He's only 7 touchdowns and 2 picks, 1,736 yards. Brian Robinson's been having a good year, 101 yards, 101 carries, 461 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Terry McLaurin's having a resurgence at 40 receptions, 579 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So this is a game I would not expect much out of, except that the Commanders win this. This was a game earlier this year where the Commanders just pulled out a field goal fest win and they didn't score a single touchdown. When this is like the second game of Jane Daniels' career where he looked good, but he was just not getting touchdowns. Now he's getting them in abundance. Um, yeah, this is just a game. It's in division, which is always one that can be full of surprises, but I don't expect the Commanders to lose this one, and they should win this one rather comfortably. Yeah. Patriots Titans is a game as well. The Patriots coming off of a win over the Jets, it's a huge morale boost. I don't know if they're going to have Drake May back. He is in concussion protocol the last I knew. He was limited in practice, so that's good news for the Patriots. Usually, if he was probably not going to be playing, he probably wouldn't be in protocol. He would probably be in, well, he would be in protocol, but he wouldn't be practicing. So if he's limited, that's good news for the Patriots, perhaps. The Titans they keep having misery upon misery dumped on them. They they lost humiliatingly, allowing 52 points by the end of the third quarter to the Lions. I mean, it's the Lions, who are a really good team, but still, that's a crushing loss considering how well they played for the first quarter and a half. The Titans did. I think Mason Rudolph is planning to start once again for them, and this should be a more winnable game. I would say honestly, if the Titans start Mason Rudolph again, I would not be shocked if they won this game. And here's why: just because the Titans defense isn't bad, it really isn't. I mean, they get gashed a lot, but they do have the semblance of a good defense with a good pass rush. They have corner pieces in the secondary that you would think like L'Jarius Sneed, who you would think would lock this down. Titans are actually favored in this game. It is in Nashville, interestingly enough. But Patriots, if they get Drake May back, Drake May's been playing pretty well himself. That I would not be shocked if they pull this out. It's just if Jacoby Brissett plays for the Patriots, I don't trust him to score a ton of points. And Mason Rudolph has shown he can score points with this Titans offense. Um, as bleak as it might be for both teams. This is a win that they both kind of just want for pride at this point. Both aren't really looking for a playoff spot. It's just more draft position, tape bowl, you could say. Yeah, this is just a you feel bad for both these teams having to play this kind of a game already this year, but it feels like the Titans need the win. Or I mean, if you look at it another way, they need the loss to kind of keep um, their draft position. I think right now they would hold the number one overall pick if the draft were to be this week. So yeah, I could easily see the Titans actually winning this game, depending on circumstances. But I also wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots came in and played an ugly enough game and made the Titans, turn the ball over enough that because that is a propensity the Titans have to, and the Patriots just come away with a last minute field goal to win it. Cowboys Falcons. Cowboys kind of started to see the end of the road. They're 3-4 after the loss to San Francisco over on Sunday Night Football last weekend. Falcons coming off a good win over the Bucks, who put up a bit of a fight, but the Falcons just pulled away and showed how much better they are than them. Um, yeah, Kirk Cousins has played a decent year, 2,106 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks. Dak Prescott has been He's at 1,845 yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 picks. This has been a good year for Bijan, his second year. He's got 116 carries, 546 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I do expect the Falcons to win this. It is in Atlanta. Um, if they want to you know, keep themselves in contention for a playoff spot, in the contention for the division, which right now they lead, they need to win this kind of game against a mid-type team that is good enough to beat you on their good day, but it's you know I do trust the Falcons offense to win this one because you know it's against a Cowboys defense that's it's not been great this year, and a loss I think really hurts the Cowboys. A win actually keeps the Cowboys very much alive for a playoff spot, but yeah, if the Falcons won, it would be very devastating for the Cowboys' playoff chances, and would keep the pressure on Tampa to have to keep winning, and in order to stay right behind the Falcons for the division, which I think is Tampa's. Well, let's look at their chances in the playoffs here. Um, Tampa is right outside the playoffs actually. So if the playoffs are to end today, so yeah, they need the Falcons to lose to keep up. I think because I don't know if they'll be able to keep up in the playoff hunt itself because just of how injured they are. But yeah, the Falcons should win this. I think they've got the better offense, and their defense is solid enough to get a win that would be huge. Coming up is a really good game. I think it's probably one of the better games of the week. Actually, Bears Cardinals. That sounds weird. If you had told me that Bears Cardinals might be one of the games of a week, I would have at the beginning of the year I probably would have laughed. But this is actually two teams that are scrappy, and the Bears coming off the Hail Mary loss to Washington last week. Cardinals coming off a good scrappy win against the Dolphins where they were down by 9 and still came back and won it. And that's kind of been the story of the Cardinals this year, just scrappy wins. Kyler Murray's been playing great football this year. 1,639 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got several rushing touchdowns as well, I believe. Um, yeah, he's got a 67.2 completion percentage. Kyler has not been bad this year. Neither is James Conner for the running back spot. 129 carries for 557 yards and 4 touchdowns. And this is just kind of who the Cardinals are, a scrappy, tough team coming up against a Bears team that is really good on defense and has an offense that's led by Caleb Williams, who has got 1,448 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 picks. And DeAndre Swift has 109 carries for 454 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, this is a game that is very even, very close. Both decent, um, have decent defenses and that can hold each other, down, hold teams down enough for their offenses to kind of wake up. If the Bears play like they did last week on offense, though, I don't think they'll win. I think that's the key because if and to be fair, they came up against the Commanders defense that was pretty good last week, but the Cardinals have a scrappy enough defense where they can also hold the Bears. And if they do that, the Cardinals might be able to pull this off and actually, keep themselves, in the division race. They are in first place right now. A win would keep them in first place. Um, and I mean, I don't think anyone would have said the Cardinals would be in first place in the division at the start of this year, but here they are, and they're playing like it. Of the three teams and that are tied for first at 4-4, they have been the better, more consistent team, and this is a Bears team that wants to keep themselves in the playoff hunt. They're 4-3. A win keeps them above the Bucks in the playoffs for the last playoff spot because we're starting to look at that now. Where teams are in the playoff standings, and because we're at the halfway point and all that. It's just a very fascinating game to me because both of these teams, want to keep themselves in the playoff hunt. I mean, a loss by the Cardinals if the Niners are on a bye this week, so that's huge for them. But um, a win by the Cardinals would just keep them help secure the division for another week for them, I think. And it's just such a fascinating game. How the Cardinals are going to use Marvin Harrison Jr. after he had some great plays last week against the Dolphins, making spectacular catch after spectacular catch. Yeah, it's just I'm excited for this game. I really am. Jaguars Eagles. Jaguars had a scrappy loss to the Packers last week. Packers kicked a last minute field goal. Um, and the Eagles coming off of a blowout win over the Bengals. Uh, 37-17 win. The Eagles should win this. If the Eagles keep on their trajectory, they have a good offense and a good solid defense. They should be able to win this. I don't expect much problems from Jacksonville, even though they did keep it close with Green Bay. It is in Philly, and yeah, if the Eagles are who people are starting to say who they are again, and they are a contender in the NFC, this is a game they need to win and should win. Lions Packers is also a good game this week. Packers, like I just said, they came off a scrappy win over Jacksonville. They've had 2 straight walk-off field goal wins. Lions coming off the beatdown of the Titans, where somehow Jared Goff only had 90 yards passing. Um, yeah, this is going to be a fun game. This is practically for the division again. Second time in 3 weeks, the Lions have had a ipso de facto division game, lead game. Um, the Lions come into 6-1. Packers come into 6-2. So yeah, Packers win would put them top of the division. Lions win would easily cement a 2-game lead over the division. For the most part, yeah, this is gonna be a fun game. I really do think so. It is at Lambeau, which is even better. Jordan Love, he didn't have a great game last week, but he's been solid enough. 1,547 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. He did have the groin injury against the Jags. It's nothing serious apparently. Um, but yeah, this is he. There's a very real chance he's going to be playing against the Lions. Um, But yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. Jared Goff, playing a very solid ball, 1,695 yards, 13 touchdowns, 4 picks. It's the run game that really keeps the spark going for Detroit. 92 carries, 591 yards, 6 touchdowns. Yeah, this is a game that is going to be pivotal in terms of the playoff race and seeding, and yeah, this is already going to be. My mouth is watering for this game as well. Oh yeah, I'm really excited for this, and I can't wait to watch because these are two teams that do not like each other, and even if it's a friendly animosity, it's still animosity because it's a division game. Anything can happen. I can't exactly say who I would pick, but if I had to lean towards someone, it might be the Packers, just because they have a better defense. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Lions somehow pulled this one out as well. Um, I, I could easily see the Lions winning this too. It's just that it's that close. It's that it's that good a game that easily could be a playoff game when the playoffs come around. So very exciting. I would definitely recommend if you have time to go tune into that game. Rams Seahawks. It's a division game. Seahawks coming off of the beatdown they had at the hands of Bills at home. They will be at home this week. They are taking on a Rams team that just beat the Vikings on Thursday Night Football last week. So this is, I want to think, the Rams offense is back. I just don't know if that's going to be the case this week. I would say it probably will be just because I do trust the Rams more than I trust the Seahawks because their offense is overall more consistent. They're going to have Cup and Puka back, and the Seahawks just are not good on either side of the trenches, and that showed last week against the Bills. Um, yeah, and Kyron Williams has been running like a madman. He's got 139 carries, 533 yards, 8 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker has been very disappointing this year. 74 carries, 315 yards, 6 touchdowns. Gino has been kind of disappointing as well. 2,197 yards, 8 touchdowns, 7 picks. Stafford has been pretty disappointing too, but I do kind of give him some grace because he's not had his top two receivers, and he still kept his team in afloat. The Rams coming into this are 3-4. A win puts them back at 500. Um, and that would put them right in the thick of the playoff race again. And that's huge for them because it looked like 2 weeks ago that they were kind of a loss of, to the Vikings would put them out of their misery, put them at 3-5 and kind of effectively take them out of the playoff race almost. But a win at this game would be huge and just put them right back in the playoff hunt and just make it a very congested bottom of that NFC playoff picture. And I kind of like that prospect. It would hurt the Seahawks, but I just do not trust them enough to pull off a win here. Just because the Rams' defensive line is pretty stout. They have a good offensive line and a running back that can just tear you up at any point, and the offense is just a lot more deadly. So yeah, I would not be shocked if the Rams pulled this off at all. Colts Vikings is got a lot of storylines in this one. The Vikings coming off two straight losses. Colts, benching Anthony Richardson, their fourth overall pick from last year, um, and going with Joe Flacco at the starting QB for the foreseeable future. There has not been a timeline on that. It does look like he might be the quarterback for the rest of the year. Who knows? The Colts, of course, wanting desperately to keep in the playoff hunt. Um, and after the loss last week, that's going to be harder to do, but still doable. I believe right now they are. Um, they are actually eighth in the playoff standings. They're right behind the Chargers, so that's huge. And so they kind of want to keep that position on Sunday Night Football. They're coming up against a good Vikings defense. I still think the Vikings are good. They've had close losses to a Lions team that's very good, and the Rams, who had a resurgent offense, come back this last week and looked good against two great receivers in Puka and Cooper Cup. So yeah, I think this could be a fun game. Two desperate teams wanting to keep their positions in the playoffs, and um, yeah, Sam Darnold hasn't been bad for the Vikings. 1,810 yards, 14 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's not bad. Jonathan Taylor hasn't had a bad year. 92 carries for 454 yards, 5 touchdowns. Aaron Jones hasn't had a bad year as well, with 104 carries for 501 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Vikings. It is in Minnesota, so I would say there's a slight edge to the Vikings. I would give them, but I wouldn't be shocked as well if the Colts somehow, just because they have been, you know, on it, you know, they need this win. They really do, and Flacco has been. They've been much better with Flacco, coming in and playing better than Anthony Richardson, and there's a lot of discourse coming into this game with I do want to address this because this is a huge discussion now that Anthony Richardson's been benched. Of is the NFL developing quarterbacks, and how good is the NFL actually at developing quarterbacks? I would say people are impatient, fans are impatient, and teams tend to listen to social media a little too much, because teams get these quarterbacks with high expectations coming out of college. I mean, just look at Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson had a lot of expectations, and yet they just don't pan out to those expectations right away. If they don't, have a Patrick Mahomes coming out party season, it's considered a failure, and by the fans, by ownership, and it just puts so much pressure on coaches to make a make the developing of the quarterback a quick, easy process that makes their quarterback that's a high draft pick star. And Josh Allen, you look at Josh Allen, he was a good quarterback coming out of Wyoming, raw quarterback prospect, and it took him a couple of years to actually hit the quarterback ceiling that he is today. A very good quarterback overall, solid stats. Doesn't turn the ball over often now as much as he used to a year or two ago. But he's solid enough to win games. He's a very electric runner. He's a very good quarterback, and yeah, it is a problem, I would say, but it tends to be because people have way too high expectations for a group of kids that come into this with and don't know how to meet those expectations because they never had to meet those kinds of expectations where they have to carry a franchise on their back. And yeah, not many people are up to that kind of pressure. And so it helps me respect guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, who just came in and were dominant. Um, and Joe Burrow too. I don't want to forget him. Those are all quarterbacks that just came in and dominated and looked great. You feel bad that quarterbacks have to deal with those kinds of quarterbacks in our league, but that's the way it is. That's how it rolls. And yeah, I just would say, fans, if you see your quarterback not doing well the first few weeks, try to be careful because those quarterbacks do read um, what we say on social media, and they're trying their best, even if they aren't going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, the next Dan Marino. You know, give them time. They need time to develop. They need time to get good, and I fear we don't let coaches do that enough. The final game of the week, Buccaneers Chiefs, is Monday Night Football. It is at Arrowhead. 7-0 Chiefs coming off a win over Vegas. Buccaneers coming off the disappointing loss to the Falcons, where they really wanted to keep pace with the Falcons in the division. Buccaneers obviously need this win if they want to, save the playoff hunt. I mean, it's not like they won't, but still, it's starting to look unlikely if they can't pull off a win this year. Baker comes in this game leading the league in touchdown passes, 21 touchdowns, 9 picks. Patrick Mahomes, not having the season of his normal standard, 1,651 yards, 8 touchdowns, 9 picks. It's still, he's making the clutch plays, and a lot of the, you know, it's not been his best year at all. but he's making clutch plays when it matters most. Obviously, the Chiefs are 7-0. And they get DeAndre Hopkins' home debut as well for Monday Night Football, which is pretty cool. Bucks come into this game a very run-heavy team with their trio of running backs in Bucky Irving, Rachaad White, and Sean Tucker, all very good running backs in their own right. They will not, of course, be having Chris Godwin or Mike Evans, as they're both still pretty hurt, and of course, Chris Godwin's out for the year. Um, Travis Kelce scored his first touchdown of the year last week. He has 35 yards and a touchdown off 38 catches. And Kareem Hunt, of course, the leading rusher for the Chiefs, 84 carries, 308 yards, 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irving is the leading rusher for the Bucks, 76 carries, 395 yards, 3 touchdowns. I do think this could be a good game, a close game, because the Bucks, they are a good team, despite what people would think. This is a Bucks team that is scrappy, but at the same time, their defense is not great. And I think the Chiefs could actually exploit that and look good in the process, I think. In a primetime game, that's where Chiefs tend to show up a lot of the times, historically speaking, in the Patrick Mahomes era. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say, they will or anything guaranteed, but I would also not, be surprised if this was a close game. But I do think the Chiefs will win. I do think it could be a comfortable win, but we'll have to see. And the Chiefs' defense is one of the best in the league this year, and it'll be interesting to see how they play Baker Mayfield and the three-headed monster that is the Buccaneers' rushing attack. Because if the Bucks can get the run going, they usually can get their offense going. So if the Chiefs, who are one of the best teams at stopping the run this year, if not the best, um, if they can stop the run, I think they'll be able to stifle the Bucks and get a good dub on Monday night. And that has been your grid side preview of all the NFL Week 9 action. Thank you so much for stopping by this week for this episode. Really greatly appreciate any and all support. Give us a like, a follow, subscribe on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, Audible, and on TikTok and Instagram as well. Please give us a like, a follow, and give us a comment if you have any suggestions for what we could do here on the show. And thank you so much, and we will see you on the next episode.